do 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 do. So this is the Pink Panther by Jeff Koons. He is an American artist, and the medium is glazed porcelain. This statue stands at 3 feet 4 inches, and it was made in 1988. And because it's Unit 10, is it a postmodernist work? And let's get into it. So first, what I want to talk off is, as you can see, this is quite shiny. So it's made out of glazed porcelain, and the glossy texture is intended. It's supposed to give it this very cheap look, so it kind of looks like a souvenir or a quiche. And that tackiness also comes into play with the colors, where you see we got this very high yellow, where it's almost like a raw yellow for the blonde hair. We have this bubblegum sort of pink and this minty green / blue dress color. So it's supposed to look like something you'd find at like a cheap souvenir shop. And it's actually inspired by a German figurine, where Koons had a workshop produce these to kind of give them an authenticity of sorts. And it's made in triplicate commercial production, which means there's 1 original and 2 copies. So a bit about this is, it was one of a series of works. There's 20 sculptures total, and the series is called Banality, which means a condition of being stale or boring or unoriginal. And those 20 sculptures are either made out of polychromed wood or porcelain, and they all share the common theme of having nothing serious about them, as you can see from something as silly as this. And the whole point of the series, and this image specifically, is to criticize pop culture, and primarily criticizing it through using it in art. Similar to another artist we've studied, Duchamp, he challenges what it means to be an artist or to make art by using something as obscure as the 2 figures in this image. And so I bet you're wondering who this is. This is Jane Mansfield. She was a B-list TV star in the 1960s, and she was known for wardrobe malfunctions, which is kind of shown here. And that's what she mainly got famous for. And then this guy right here is the Pink Panther. We all know him. He's a cartoon character from the 60s and 70s. The Pink Panther here is kind of wrapped around Mansfield in a sort of sexual way, covering one of her breasts while she covers the other. And we see her looking off into the distance. That's supposed to, like, you can see this smile and her head tilting back as if she's looking at a crowd or looking at someone to get their attention. And if we look right here, you can see that the Pink Panther's tail is actually kind of getting a bit into her dress, so that adds to the sexuality of the image. And like I mentioned the word earlier, kitsch, K-I-T-S-C-H, it means it's mass-produced, and it's way different from the typical avant-garde art that we're used to, where it's supposed to be this grand image that's one and one only. This is supposed to be something that gets the attention of everyone or most people, and that's the reason it's sort of tacky, because they want to reach out to everyone, so it's clearly a little questionable in taste. And one thing I also want to mention here with Koons is a lot of his art for the Banality series, or just some of his art in general, is often driven, as he's mentioned himself in interviews, by sexuality, so that's why this is a bit promiscuous. This work was sold in 2014 to MoMA for $16.8 million. He was actually accused of copyright infringement and was sued over it, and I believe he got off on the grounds of saying that this is a parody and it's meant to be a satire of the work, so it's not actually using it for profit. And Koons was very Gauguin-like, where he was very intentional in his self-promotion as an artist, where he had a PR guy and he took out ads in art magazines to spread his name around. And one fun fact about him, or interesting fact, is that he is currently the most expensive living artist in the world. So these are the David vases. They are Chinese, specifically from the Yuan dynasty, Y-U-A-N. And they're made of white porcelain with a cobalt blue underglaze. They are 2 feet tall, and they are from 1351 CE. And they are Chinese, like I said. So some basic vase anatomy that you might want to know is the lip, the neck, the handles, which are on the neck, the shoulders, the body, and the foot. So it's just head to toe, some simple stuff. And a bit about porcelain. It is a very hard and specific type of ceramic. It's basically very pure. That's why it's so white, and it's typically seen with this glossy coat that's on it, and that's a glaze. And the name porcelain is actually from Marco Polo. It sounds like an Italian word, porcellio. And it's called this because when he first saw it, when he came to China, he thought it looked like the inside of a shell. And the word underglaze that I keep using is to describe how this is made, where it has this blue applied, this cobalt blue, and then the glaze over it. So it's basically sturdier because the glaze is over everything else, kind of acting as a protective film. And this blue and white coloring that you see is a real quintessential part of a lot of Chinese porcelain. And that cobalt blue is from present-day Iran, which was one of their heavy trading partners back in the day. Another thing about porcelain is that it's called China or Chinaware because the Chinese have had a really frequent history of just producing so much porcelain that it's kind of become synonymous with them. And so a bit about these vases is that they were intended to be altar vases and offerings for a Taoist temple. And they were commissioned by a man named Zhang Wenjin. And we know this because there's a name, a date, and dedication written at the top of the vase, which I will show you shortly. And these vases were used for a prayer of protection for his family, and basically because he had a bit of a shaky past where he ran an illegal salt trade, and he wanted to please the gods that he believed he angered. And so what we see here for the content is we see these elephant heads on the handles, and we see in the body there's a great dragon in this serpentine form here. And we see that there's a lot of floral stuff on the base around here, and some vine as well. And there are these inscriptions that date specifically to 1351, and they state his name. I don't know exactly where because I don't read Chinese, but they state his name, his community, like where he was from, I think it's down to his specific city and the district. And they have a prayer and offering with the purpose, which the specific purpose is because, this is a bit of context, it is because there was a general who was recently made into a god, and the vases are dated so specific that we know that it is in May 13th of 1351. And the way it words it is it says, the 4th month in the 11th year of the Zizang reign. And so moving on to the context, we know that in 1351, China was a part of the Mongolian Empire, which specifically at the time it was the Yuan dynasty. And these people were very trade-oriented, and they were very heavy in trade, especially with the Middle East, and that's how they had this cobalt blue from Iran. I know that you're probably wondering why they're called the David vases if they're Chinese, and that's because they were named after Sir Percival David, who had one of the largest collections of Chinese porcelain and Chinese ceramics. And he actually brought these two vases, because they were originally separated from all of the trading over the years, and he brought them back together. So yeah, that's how they got their name. And that's it. So in closing here, I just want to take a second to talk about how these two works are connected, and it's actually insanely simple. It's just the material. Where on the left with the David vases, you have something that is made out of porcelain by basically the original porcelain users, the Chinese. And on the right, you have a more modern take on the use of porcelain, which is the Pink Panther. And there's really not much else in common because one's a satire and it's using porcelain to look tacky, and the other is using porcelain as a highly respected art form that is basically culture defining in a way, and that's how you get the word China. But yeah, it's just the material. That's it. Nothing special. Do 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 do.